On the 24th of March 2018, over 120 adults and 30 children gathered here at High Street in the middle of Harpenden for our Big Day In 2018. On that day, I gave the following keynote address introducing this, our Greater Things initiative. I hope you will be inspired by it and get involved.
Exactly 4 years ago, at our annual gathering in this place in 2014, we discerned that the primary aim of High Street Methodist Church is to see lives and relationships and communities in this world transformed by the love of God in Jesus Christ. If we're not seeing that happen, we should shut up shop and sell the site and give it to someone else who will make that happen, because that's what we want to see happen, isn't it? You don't sound very enthusiastic. We do not exist to serve ourselves. We exist, as the old chorus says, to serve the purpose of God in our generation. That's what we're here to do. We, just as God the Father sent Jesus, his Son, into the world, so Jesus has said he is sending us as his followers into the world. And our purpose is nothing more and nothing less than to continue the earthly ministry of our Lord Jesus Christ. That's why we are here. That's why we're on this site. That's why we put on so many activities. That's the purpose of all this stuff that was on the front of the notices, all the stuff we've just celebrated doing over the last year. And Jesus summarized his ministry and our ministry in different ways. He said that he had been anointed to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom to the prisoners, for recovery of sight to the blind, to release the oppressed. He said he'd come to seek and save those who are lost. He said that he'd come not to condemn the world, but bring salvation to it, to give eternal life to those who actually are living a substandard fraction of the life that God wants everyone to enjoy. And the gospel accounts of Jesus' ministry are accounts of lives and relationships and communities being transformed by God's love. Through the ministry of Jesus, ordinary people were forgiven, they were healed, they were set free. They were welcomed into God's kingdom. Through the earthly ministry of Jesus, ordinary people encountered the living God, were equipped as God's people, and were sent out to extend God's kingdom. In John 14 verse 12, Jesus says this, "I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these." These are the words of Jesus. Think about that for a moment, what that means. Let it the sense of it sink in. Those who choose later to go to Dennis Stamp's, good to see you, Dennis. Dennis's Bible study. May hear him correct me on this, but who knows. But if you want to discover more about what that verse means in context, go to that seminar, which will be in this room. But at a basic level, Jesus appears, to me at least, to be saying that he does not intend the ministry of the Church of Jesus Christ, his church, to be merely a faint shadow of what his earthly ministry was. Jesus appears to expect his earthly ministry to continue through you and through me, through High Street Methodist Church, through every church in this town and beyond, with an even greater impact on the world than when he walked with his 2 feet in this world. At the end of this afternoon, we're going to be giving you to take home a copy of a new booklet that we've worked hard at putting together for you to take away and to be inspired by. It's a Greater Things booklet. These set out what it might mean for us as a church and for us as individual followers of Jesus to do greater things for God. But Greater Things is about us imagining a future bigger and bolder than our present. Not for ourselves alone, but more importantly for the people of this town that we're trying to reach. Only 8% of this town's population currently are connected with church. 8%. 92% of the population of this town have nothing to do with the church. And we want to make that difference. We want to reach them with the love of God. So Greater Things is about us believing that God will do even greater things in and through us if we choose to participate fully in the mission of Jesus. And as we've already heard, we're not exactly starting from scratch. We're building on a rich heritage established by the faith and generosity of countless people. The Methodist Church in Harpen has been here 220 years, more than 220 years. But we're also building on the wonderful things that this generation are already doing, as we've seen already. Greater Things is about us having a greater impact on this town and beyond. We want to welcome more people into God's family. We want to bring fullness of life to an increasing number and variety of people. Our ongoing aim is to come alongside people of every generation, from the very oldest to the very youngest. We want to expand our ministry for those who are retired, for those who are of working age, for those who are single, for those who are in relationships, for those who are families, for students, for teenagers, for children. From this incredible site here at the heart of this town, we want to expand our partnership with other churches and agencies to be ever more effective in supporting those in our town who are struggling perhaps with poor mental health, maybe with isolation and loneliness, maybe with addiction and debt, maybe with disability, maybe with any kind of brokenness or need. Such were those who flocked to Jesus when he walked in Galilee. And we are about continuing the gospel of ministry of Jesus today, here in our town. We want to see more people come to faith. We want to see more people called to the various ministries of the church. We want to become a training hub, not just for ourselves, but for the wider church of Jesus Christ. And I truly believe that High Street Methodist Church, as one of the 5 largest Methodist churches in the country, it is our calling to see from amongst us some of the young people we're nurturing in faith becoming the ministers of the churches of the future. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? It's us to do it. We're being called to do it. And so I pray that some of those 185 or whatever it is children who are attached to our children's church, that a whole army of them will not only come to faith, but be nurtured to the extent that they have some form of ministry when they come to become adults. I hope some of them will have some form of ministry once they're teenagers, to be honest. We want to see all of that. And in order to support greater things, we've already begun 3 fundamental reviews. For various reasons, we need to strengthen the pastoral system by which we care for one another in this church. As your church family, we want to ensure that at whatever stage of life you are at, that we're providing appropriate support and care for you in your life, in your faith. So this coming year, Maggie, the amazing Maggie Grand, who stood here and told us about Children's Church, as our pastoral secretary, she will be leading a thoroughgoing review of our pastoral care system. This will involve us adopting new software amongst other things, to keep our membership records in line with the new data protection rules that we have to keep to. As John's already outlined, the ongoing development of our work is going to require more money. Our Gift Aid Secretary, John Harris, has already begun leading a review of our pledged giving. That's what the new giving leaflets are from. And that is to ensure that our regular giving and tax recovery increases to the level we require to do all that we believe God's calling us to do. And as many of you will know, there is also a review of our buildings, because we are serious about doing greater things for God. We want to take forward the improvements and extensions to these buildings that we know will enable them to be shaped properly for all we're planning to do. At our big day in last year, we launched a widespread consultation on the architect's feasibility study. The leadership team then spent months looking at your feedback. There was loads of it, and discerning what God was saying through it. The church council then agreed that we should employ an architect to undertake more detailed design work for 3 different building phases. Phase 1 encompasses improvements to this space that we're in here, the church, to make it more flexible and suitable for all we know God's calling us to do in it. From the consultation feedback, we've got a pretty good idea from you about what we require in here and what the various options and variations to that might be. So we will be seeking detailed designs from the architect to get this place sorted. Phases 2 and 3. Phase 2 is the rear rooms, which we know are past their sell-by date, and phase 3 is a planned extension to Wesley's, our cafe. And for both these phases, we're asking the architects to establish with the planners what outline designs would be permissible or practical. We want to increase our capacity through phases 2 and 3 to more comfortably welcome onto this site more people, not least at our peak time of Sunday mornings. To take this important work forward, a small working group has been very busy preparing the groundwork for the next stage of selecting and instructing an architect. This group is Richard Atkins, who's the chair of the leadership team, Charlotte Ballard-Scott, the deputy chair, John Bristow, our treasurer, myself, and then we've had the massive benefit of being joined by a church member, Nelson Hanna, who himself is an architect. Really useful. Having our own in-house architect is a great asset and will help us ensure that we will get the best possible service from the professionals we employ. But before we approach any architects, Nelson is currently helping us to ensure that our brief that we give the architects for phases 2 and 3, which are the least uncertain bits of all this, are very clear and absolutely feasible. The preparatory work now being done with Nelson's help will, we believe, ensure that a lot of time and energy will be saved further down the line when the architects have been appointed. We have identified 8 architects, and we will soon be approaching these to ask them to come and present to the small group. We hope that these 8, from them, we'll be able to choose an architect to partner with us for the entire duration of the 3-phase project. So please do be assured that we've not lost momentum. We've not taken our eye off the ball. These things must be done thoroughly and properly and the right process. We're working effectively to ensure, first, that we appoint the right architect, second, that the architect has all the information they need to do the best job, and third, that we minimize the costs as far as we're able to. Personally, I'm really excited about all this. Not because I'm a chartered surveyor and like tinkering with buildings, but because I'm a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And by doing this, we're going to have a massive impact for Jesus in this town, even more than we're already having. We'll be able to do far greater things for God when all this is done. And that's what we all want. At the end of the day, however, the development of our buildings will only result in us doing greater things if at the same time that architects are fiddling about with plans and builders are building, if at the same time we are focusing ourselves upon our corporate development as a church and we're developing individually in our discipleship as followers of Jesus Christ. The Greater Things booklets will help you to think through how you can develop yourself. And you'll find in them a number of challenges. First of all, we want to challenge you to pray more. We want to ask you to go deeper in your relationship with Christ, in your faith. God welcomes us as we are, that's true, but he then challenges us to become more like his son Jesus. God welcomes us and then wants us to keep growing in our faith. We're called to support one another in our discipleship. As a church, we're committed to equipping you as people of God. But it's down to each of us, down to each of you, to take responsibility for engaging in that equipping, stepping up and saying yes when offered the chance to grow. We're asking you to pray regularly for our church, for our town, for the world. We're asking you to read at least one of the Gospels in the Bible and discover for yourself what Jesus teaches about discipleship, about service, about generosity. We're asking you to prioritize being regularly in worship, as David said earlier. Try and make it every week. Try not to make it just once a month. How can we build community if we just turn up once a month? Turn up every time you can. We're asking you to support your faith and the faith of others by joining a home group if you haven't already joined one. Then secondly, we want to challenge you to serve. Within your Greater Things booklet, you will find a volunteer pathway. Find out where you have reached on your pathway of volunteering, on the road of service within the life of the church. Some of us are just starting out in service. Others have for years been leading whole teams of other volunteers. We challenge you to find out where you are on that journey and take the next step on the volunteer pathway. When we talk about the church doing greater things, what we really mean is you and me, us in this room, and those who couldn't be here today, doing greater things for God. The church isn't someone else. The church is you. The church is me. We need to step up and make sure we're playing our part in that. We're already blessed with a whole army of volunteers, and many of you here today, I want to thank you for volunteering and all the work you do. Excluding major events like the Christmas Carnival and the other committees and leadership team and things that you might be on, excluding all those, the volunteer rotas of High Street Methodist Church that people regularly vote on, it takes 350 names to fill those regular rotas to make stuff happen. So thank you to those of you who are on at least one of those rotas. Those who are on 6 of those rotas, that's well done. Thank you very much for that. At the back, at some point before you go, please take a look at the volunteer profiles that we've laid out there relating to the different teams and rotas. The lilac ones are for things that happen on Sundays, the pink for the weekdays, the pale blue for the flexible stuff. Please take a look at these at some point. Consider whether God may be calling you to join one of those rotas, either to start volunteering or to extend your volunteering. And if something grabs you in particular, you can take one of the A5 flyers and it tells you who to contact for more details. One particular growth area that we've already heard about is our children's church and Sunday creche. We constantly need volunteers for that. So if your passion is for children's work, please take one of the leaflets relating to that and volunteer. Finally, it's been mentioned already, but we really do want to challenge you generously to give. Give financially so that we can do greater things for God. Again, in the Greater Things booklet, you'll find a financial giving pathway. Whether you are a beginner in giving occasionally or already giving a fixed percentage on a regular basis, we want you to consider where you are on the giving road and ask prayerfully of God, should I be taking the next step on that giving journey? Many in this town, I know, are financially rich and time poor. That's the sort of town we live in. If you are time poor and you're feeling guilty about not being able to volunteer, don't feel guilty about that. Just give us a lot of money and enable us to employ people to do what you haven't got the time to help us do. We can only sustain and build the core staff team of employees we've got and run the volunteer systems we've got if you are generous, if you have money. If you don't have the money, be generous in other ways. But if you have a lot of money, please be generous. There is, I don't think, any greater thing for you to be giving your money to than the work we're doing here. We're changing lives and relationships and communities by the love of God. And your money can help. This is not, however, an either or, I would like to stress. If you've got money and you've got time, don't choose between one or the other. Do both. Do both. And my guess is some of the strongest and most generous givers financially in this church are also the ones who are putting in the hours volunteering as well. Seems often to be the case. My Bible reading for yesterday included this verse from Proverbs 11, verse 25. The generous soul will be made rich, and the ones who water will be watered themselves. I have found it, others have given testimony to it. When I step out and sacrificially give to the work of God, I don't lose out. I gain more than I can imagine. It is the testimony of many of those who live generous lives that is the case.
In this Greater Things booklet, there's a lot more detail, and it tells you in here how you can be more involved at High Street Methodist Church. But there is also in here a prayer, and I'd encourage you to pray this prayer every day. I'm going to pray it now. Loving God, the selfless love of your Son, Jesus Christ, brings transformation to lives, relationships, and communities. Give to us that same selfless love, that we may do even greater things for you. Help us to discern our part in this work and to give generously of our time, energy, expertise, and finance. Work through us by your Spirit to enable others to encounter you, to be equipped for your service, and to share in the extension of your kingdom. Amen.